Welcome to Your Mind Matters. This Saturday, March, what's the date, Abby? 7th. I thought it was the 7th yesterday.
I wrote the 6th the day before. Yeah, I was all wrong on my paperwork. Luckily, doctors don't look at those things that well.
That is true. That is very true. Because I really thought the day was but we're here.
We are.
Saturday, March the 7th, here in sunny Savannah, Georgia. We had a lot of rain.
Oh, yeah.
We had more rain than I think,
I feel like it was more than I've ever seen, but I can't be right. But
we had this in December as well. We had all this rain.
Was it this cold and rain? I mean...
Well, I think every time it rains, the temperature changes. So it was warm, then it rained, then it got a little chilly, then it may warm up. I think it's going to warm up today.
It's
a beautiful day.
And they're already out in the streets starting St. Patrick's Day. I mean,
getting ready to kick it off.
I mean, I just am seeing a lot more people honking, things with lights on them. I think they're just trying to prepare.
I think they're getting ready. People are here. They're ready to have a good time. But St. Patrick's Day is not until what, next week?
Oh, yes.
The 17th? Right.
But, this brings us to what we talked about, the coronavirus. We have the third biggest event in the world here in Savannah, Georgia.
This is the third biggest event in the world. Not just St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day. It is for St. Patrick's Day. Even Ireland. This is the third biggest in the world. And so should we...
That's incredible.
Yeah. The coronavirus is...
That's incredible.
Real.
The coronavirus is everywhere.
Well,
it's like savoir-faire. It's everywhere.
But I mean, my doctor was saying she was going to go to Disney World. She's not going to go to Disney World anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
No Disney World now because of the coronavirus.
People all over.
People are not. Yeah, it's already starting to affect certain things. But
yeah.
We're going to rap about it. But I'm going to take care of some housekeeping real quick.
Do that.
Welcome to WRULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. As always, we have to take care of housekeeping. According to WRU, today on my ride to work. No, I take that back. I wasn't working today. This is not a job. It's an adventure. The viewpoints expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of WRUU, its license holder, or its staff.
Okay.
The following program contains subject matter in realistic language that some listeners may find objectionable. Listener discretion is advised. So we've taken care of the housekeeping for today.
Was that a warning?
No, we were supposed to be reading that the whole time, and we didn't. We had no clue. And so now that we know, we want to make certain that we're square.
Okay.
All right. And for those listening to our show, and to include faculty and staff of WRUU, please, we appreciate all the constructive feedback, and we would like some idea about shows you may want, topics you may want to.
Totally.
We'll listen. We can do a show on almost anything related to mental health or anything in general. I mean, reading is fundamental. And so, like my daddy used to say, he was in school the day they taught reading. He might have missed the other days, but he said I was in school that day they taught reading. So, one good thing we're good at is reading, right? So says Papa Smurf. You know what Papa Smurf is?
Do I know the Smurfs?
Do you know Papa Smurf?
I know Papa Smurf.
Are you sure?
The Smurfs, yeah.
Are you sure you know Papa Smurf?
I'm absolutely.
You're telling me you know Papa Smurf is?
Yes. I'm wondering, do you know Papa Smurf?
I know Papa Smurf.
Okay.
I'm well versed in Papa Smurf.
Okay. I mean, we're not talking about Dr. Seuss.
No, Papa Smurf.
Got it.
Papa Smurf and Dr. Seuss are two totally different individuals.
But they're both very... they're individuals of color, right? And they're very smart.
The viewpoints expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of WRUU, its license holder, or its staff, or me, because that's the first time I've ever heard anybody call Papa Smurf a man of color. True, he is a man filled with color. That color would be blue. Yes. But it's interesting that you said that because, there are a lot of people that will say, I don't care what color they are, whether they're black, white, blue, green. And I say, it would bother me if it was a blue-green.
I would be...
That would have me a little I would think that's a Martian, and
Or
I'm not
sick. Somebody who's
or
sick.
sick. I mean, you'd have to be really sick, almost Walking Dead sick, to be blue or green.
Blue or
And I'm also thinking, if I saw that, I would be thinking that they truly are illegal aliens, right? I mean, if you saw a blue guy, you'd have to say, other than that Blue Man Group thing.
Yeah,
Have you ever seen that show? The
Yeah,
Blue
I
Man Group?
have.
How was it?
I have. It was good. Saw it in Vegas.
Yeah? Yeah? Would you recommend it?
Yeah.
You would
It's
recommend
exciting.
it? It was good?
It's cool.
It was
It's
good?
different.
Yeah? Okay. I may check it out one day. But they're just not down in the Blue Man Group, but I just something.
Yeah.
about-
Well, have you gone to Vegas before? You
Never
seen-
been to Vegas. Never been to Vegas. I mean, I'm almost ashamed to admit it on air, but
Yeah.
I've never been to Vegas.
I'm kind of ashamed for you.
Are you?
Yes. Everyone should experience the deviance land of Las Vegas.
Is it really deviant, or are we just giving Vegas a bad name here? with the
Not a bad name, a fun
That's their
name.
thing. Sin City, right?
Right.
Right?
Right.
I've been to New Orleans. That's as close
Oh,
as, yeah.
I
New
did
Orleans-
finally go to New Orleans. That was wonderful.
Yeah, New Orleans is as close as I've been to. And during Mardi Gras as well, so.
Oh,
Whole different
Whoa.
atmosphere.
Yeah.
Whole different atmosphere. You know. And speaking about the coronavirus. We talked about it the other day, the coronavirus on the show. We talked about the effect it was having then, and that's before I think we had our first confirmed case here, because you were a week before last, right? Now that now we've got confirmed cases here in Georgia, and and it's the first time that I've ever seen people in my practice coming, and that's a bigger concern for them. I talked to a lady this week. And her top concern for the week wasn't her finances. It wasn't, a number of other things that it usually is. It was the coronavirus. She really was concerned about what this meant for her and her family, and so this is what happens when we're looking at pandemics. Not to say this is the pandemic. Yeah, I don't know if they're calling it a pandemic or not.
I think what's crazy is all week, anywhere I went, doctor, bar, social gathering, that was the topic of discussion, and nobody would shake hands. Like at the doctor's office, she was even like, I'm not going to shake your hands. I was like, okay. And then at the bar, there was some the hand sanitizer on the bar. So we
on the bar.
So we made a joke, and I washed my hands, and then we shook hands, and so everybody's definitely discussing it. And the craziest part to me was the conspiracy, which may not be conspiracy theories.
Right.
The older I get, the more I'm starting to be a little more conspiracy theory-like.
Well, I think there's always a little bit of truth in every conspiracy theory. It's just the level of truth, actually. But I think there's a little bit of truth in everything. For example, the conspiracy theory that maybe this started in a lab, I'm pretty certain it did. But I don't think. But then to go further and say that it was released on purpose or something like that, maybe it did. Maybe it was. Who knows?
Right.
But now you'll talk to virologists. That will say no, we don't do that sort of thing. But we know.
Right. Well, that's what my doctor was saying. She was going on about how the coronavirus. There was a German medical article, so she had to research this, but they took it off because it was so controversial. But it did discuss how it was made in a lab. It's something about the HIV vaccine and the what's the other one? The E. coli the cure and brought together. Anyway, a lot of it went over my head, but I was just like, really? And she said, and I think that China developed it because they don't care much about their people. This is what she's telling me. And so this was all done for money, pharmaceutical reasons, and she said something about how the coronavirus, even if it's cured, you carry it forever. Is that true?
Well, you carry immunity to viruses.
Right.
The viruses, because of their nature, and I'm not a virologist, but I did take virology in college, right? And the way viruses are put together, the idea is that you can incorporate it into genomes of your cells, and they can, but that's a little beyond my scope. I don't want to tell anybody a story.
Right.
But this gets back to what we're talking about, the psychology of being faced with an illness that we think to ourselves that the government has it all together. They're going to take care of us. So maybe we've been lulled into this false sense of security, and maybe not. We do have people standing on the wall trying to take care of this, make certain that this doesn't turn into something much bigger. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, this does speak to how we look at our government and what it does for us and to us, right? And so does the idea of, first of all, we know for a fact that the flu is more dangerous than the coronavirus.
Right. More people have died of the flu, right?
And there's still people out there that are not getting the flu shot. And there's some people who have gotten the flu shot and have still ended up with the flu. So that, of course, has some people saying, I'm not getting the flu shot anymore, right? So we know, okay, number one, we know so far the flu is more dangerous than the coronavirus. And we also know the coronavirus has been around forever and ever, amen. This is just a variant of it that's new, that they haven't seen before. Okay, so were we, psychologically, were we given this false sense of security with a vaccine? Because that's one of the ideas of working on this crisis is getting a vaccine. If we get a vaccine, we can protect ourselves. This is part of nature. Let's just say no Chinese lab. China cares about its people. I'm going to say that. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Chinese care about Chinese. Now the Chinese government and their ideas, I don't know. But I'm going to say Chinese care about Chinese. Okay. So, with that being said, when we look at global illness, I mean, is this just a natural part of being a human being on this planet? Even to include the flu. Because we have the technology now to sequence genomes and multiply viruses and make vaccines, etc. This is all the advancement in medical science. But have we as human beings psychologically, not just here but around the globe, and especially in first world countries, right? Third world countries, maybe not. Maybe there's a whole different way of looking at it, right? Because illness is a part of their life, illness and death. But it's not here. We have all sorts of things. That's our constant preoccupation is with how to stay alive longer and better.
And trying to better.
Right. So, we go back to 1918 with the Spanish flu. How did they process that psychologically? I've watched documentaries on the bubonic plague, and I've thought to myself, standing in that situation at that time, how did these people keep going from day to day?
Yeah.
How did they keep? But the difference was life was very, very tenuous for everyone.
Sure.
Except, of course, as always, the uber rich.
Right.
But even for them.
But that's when they started to be impacted. That's when things, start to get, paid attention to.
Right. So how do we as societies look at illness and death and its effect on us today? Are we more fragile today than we were 100
mentally?
years ago?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. Absolutely, I think so. I mean, I think death was, like you said, it was very, very common every day. I mean, especially when people were starting to literally get sick and die around you.
Right.
And we are so individualized. I mean, right now, you could not leave the house, and that could be okay. You could live.
True. Very
you could
true.
not leave the house.
Very true.
This is not the way it was back then. I
Right.
mean, you had to leave to go get water and food, and so I think that now we have more time in our minds, less than like actions, like going out and actually putting ourselves at risk. So I think psychologically, it's definitely having an impact. But do I think that it could spread like something like the Spanish flu? No, I think that we are a little more cautious.
I mean, we know more.
We do,
We
right?
have more information.
We're exposed to
Right,
more. Absolutely.
In 1918, I don't know if they even knew.
Right, what was going on down the street. And
Exactly. Would they have done the same thing? Certainly, because the idea of staying alive, self-preservation takes over. And you decide, okay, I'm going to do these things, even if it's drastic things, like in the bubonic plague. They would isolate people in their homes, and they would quarantine them in their homes, even with their loved ones who didn't have it. So if you got it and showed signs of it, you were quarantined in your home with the rest of your family.
Yeah.
So now everybody got it, and you all died together.
Right.
Right. And we look at that today, and we say, "Wow, that's pretty arcane and barbaric, heartless, right?" But with the talk, and with the information that we have, and with the propaganda, and with the conspiracy theories, I'm thinking to myself, could this spin up to something so drastic where people are not even seeking medical care, but isolating themselves because, you see, people are saying, or we're getting information from everywhere, from social media, from all sorts of credible and non-credible sources about it. And it's important to have credible information, but the question is, how do you look through what's credible? I'm watching a show this morning, very, I would say, credible program on a major network. and without naming names, he's talking about an article in the New York Times, front page of the Times, about the collapse of the economy, the possible collapse of the economy, and how this could affect it. And his idea was, his commentary on it was, that you could create a self-fulfilling prophecy through. So are we actually giving information? And then the guest he had on was a doctor from Harvard, a medical doctor from Harvard, who wrote a column in the Atlantic, who basically pointed out that the coronavirus isn't as deadly as we're thinking. It's deadly, definitely, to those elderly and infirm and those who may have breathing problems or even heart conditions or some other condition, hypertension, but uncontrolled. But more importantly, should we look at this like a serious viral infection that would affect those people at those levels, as opposed to everyone all the time feeling so vulnerable to it? Because people aren't as afraid, I think, what I'm getting, people aren't afraid as much of getting it as they're afraid of dying from it. Because you don't have people. We deal with cold season, even the flu season. We don't have all these issues with the flu, but we know that as far as being deadly, this is less deadly than the flu. The flu kills more people every year than this has.
Right. The flu's been around. This is new.
So now you pointed out something. Something new.
Right. And apparently coronavirus is just a stem of the cold or something.
Right. It belongs to a group of viruses, I think, like rhinovirus and other ones that cause lower respiratory tract infections. And they can be quite, especially to the infirm.
Well, and that's what another theory was. This was a way to cut back on our elderly population.
Once again, now, and I find that hard to believe. But I'm glad you brought it up because it speaks to what people believe. So is it, again, a self-fulfilling prophecy? If you think that the government's, if you already have in your mind that the government is out, and once again, we've talked about who the government is. The government is your neighbors, right? The government are people, but we're looking at our government versus foreign governments. And once again, it's new to look into the mind of these others. We're looking through the lens of propaganda, right? Hyperbole. So how do we, why are we so fragile?
Well, like China, for example, their people, they're not freaking out like we are because they trust their government. And even though they are ones that they trust them, they're scared of them. It's just it's restricted, in what they can even see on the internet, what information they're given. And so that is not our situation at all. We are exposed to all information everywhere. And so that causes us to not trust. So even in the realm of China where things are bad, they still are like, well, they know what they're doing. We're not going to freak out. Everybody wear your mask. They're still going out. They're still, and we're over here in America not leaving the house, use sanitizer,
buy a mask.
I mean,
and that was the other thing they pointed out today was that people may, through this kind of panic and paranoia about this, may actually create dire situations for those who need it because you can't find hand sanitizer in some places, these masks. So for the people that really need it, they may not be able to get it because people like you and I don't need to wear masks. We're not sick and we're not around people that are sick. Definitely, we all need hand sanitizer. I keep that all the time.
Right.
I mean, I keep that in my office all the time.
And all this stuff with how to wash your hands. I mean, that is a huge thing. And it's like, really? Have we not been knowing how to do this that long?
Yeah, we have. Yeah. We don't. You've been in the ladies' restroom. I mean, are women in there scrubbing up?
I mean,
are they wet washing?
Well, it's like you want to go into a public bathroom and touch as little as possible. So if that means like, okay, I can manage, and then I turn it on with the faucet with my sleeve, but then I got to turn it off with my sleeve, and then you got to open the door with your foot.
Right.
And so, I think a lot of times we just rush because we just feel like, oh my God, everything in here is germy, so I'm out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've never been in the ladies' room, so I don't know how they do it in there.
Well, that's just...
I know in the men's room, you can get shamed into washing your hands.
Oh, it's a huge social
it's a big thing.
criticism.
You watch, because, it's a joke that I told that, that I heard. It was not my joke, but a guy asked another guy, and said, didn't your mother teach you to wash your hands after you use the bathroom? And he said, no, my mother taught me not to pee on my hands. Right.
Are you that bad at going to the bathroom?
Right. That, especially if you're a dude, it's like, is it that dirty? You touched it, now you have to wash your hands? Yeah. But still, even with that being said, if you're in the men's room and you go and you're like, and you say to yourself, sure, You just don't splash it, right? Without being visual.
Right.
I'm gonna tell you what it gets you. A man with his son, because he'll be teaching his son, and then the son will look at you like,
oh, what's he gonna do?
Where you going? why are you living?
Mm-hmm. The social shame is
social shame is, and so getting back to this, that was one of the things that was brought up, and this is because this host was giving a kind of itinerary of his week to come, and he was saying he's not restricting any of his travel. He's going in places that they're, but he's not sick. He's not been around anybody that's been identified with coronavirus as far as he knows. Mm-hmm. But what he was saying was, I'm not changing how I'm living. Now, he did give a disclaimer to say, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling you to pay attention to what the health experts are saying, the CDC information you're getting, and then you distill it for yourself. Now, one of the comments, somebody called in, what emailed in, one of the comments about the show, about him, was they were basically chastising him because they were saying to him, you're not being a good citizen.
Oh, because you could be exposing it all around if you were to carry it.
Exactly. And so I can see both sides of that. I can see people that are, because they're getting this information, right? People are bringing it up, just like we're bringing it up now, but we're bringing it up for a different reason. We're not giving, expert medical advice on the coronavirus. But what we're talking about is the psychological effect that this is having on people. And we're talking about just people here, but if you look around, the globe, how different places are handling it.
And how we're viewing those people who are traveling and bringing it to the event. We're like, oh my God, patient zero. Exactly. Oh, how dare they? And, they didn't know, obviously, but we do chastise them. I could see him getting some feedback like that, yeah.
The other thing about this that was kind of brought up was I've had a patient's comment about films related to pandemics.
Yes, like the World War Z's been playing something like on FX like every hour.
And so how much of this is shaping the paranoia and the angst about this?
Totally not helping.
I know there are a lot of programs, because I like those kind of programs, like the Andromeda Strain and all these kind of bug gets out. But now that I'm thinking about it, I don't want to watch those right now.
Right.
It's too real, and of course in our own imaginations, because this is what people do, because that's what our brains do. Our brain is a super computer, right? And we end up worrying. We end up creating situations. So you think about how many people have thought about this coronavirus and have seen themselves sick and dying like in a movie, because you see our culture, how media and movies and things like that affect how we think about the future. And if we go back and we think about something like, let's give you another example, like Dante's Inferno, how the idea that Dante's Inferno, which is a work of fiction, has driven our idea of a hell or a purgatory.
Absolutely. And I think, so with this, and the cases of coronavirus are so sparse here that I don't know if it's the fear, kind of like you'd be lucky to be the patient number 14 who dies, because in 100 years, you're still going to have, your name's going to be remembered, right? You're not dying alone in a nursing home. Nobody remembers you. So, I mean, this is my sick little mind.
That's okay. Go with it. Because these are your view,
right?
Not those of WRUU or staff.
Right. That's right. This is Abby Johnson's views.
Nor Papa Smurf.
Papa Smurf. And but it's like what? But at the Spanish flu or any of the other ones, that's like a mass amount of people.
Right.
So if you die in that, it's like scarier, because it's not like you were this select few that had it, and versus like everybody had the flu. To me, I don't.
But I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of, because when you watch the coverage of it, they'll go back to that in comparison of things like the Spanish flu and things like that. And they'll compare it. And I think even though it's sparsely, I think the fear, and fear is one of the greatest motivators of human behavior. No question. Fear and ambition.
And fear and politics. It's just all intertwined.
Certainly. So, how much of this is because I'm seeing it every day, and I've even have to be honest. This is the first time that one of these bugs has gone around that I've actually started. But once again, was the media coverage the same then?
Oh, right.
With SARS and MARS. And it felt like it was way over there. It's their problem. It's their problem. This became our problem before we had a documented case in the United States because of the media coverage.
Definitely. Well, also in like China.
Right,
Right now, China, is with the United States, China, Trump, politics, all
So-
these things are coming up.
So even though Wuhan, China is a long way away,
Right.
when this broke out, because we were intertwined with China in the media, is what you're saying.
Right.
Psychologically, we all started, like China's our next door neighbor.
Right. Well, not just that, but China's our enemy. Remember? China is the big dogs that aren't falling in
But
line.
everything we buy has made in China on it. So I have a hard time, and we eat Chinese food.
Totally.
And my point in saying that is that the Chinese government, the idea of the totalitarian communist government, is the enemy.
Right.
But how many Americans really think about China as the enemy? I mean, we think about Russia as the enemy because of the Cold War.
True.
And that was like, yes. But how many people really, even when you hear it in the media, how many people, and we could have a really deep intellectual discussion about China and trade and, right? But beyond that, which seems ethereal to most people, I don't think the average person thinks about China at that level, because how can they, when they're going to go to Walmart, they're going to buy something,
Yeah.
to include food stuff. Go to Walmart and buy a bag of fish. You know where it came from?
Right.
Farm raised in China.
Right.
We don't even read the bag. But if you do, somebody says, oh, you got a bag of whiting for the fish fry, you know it's made in China, I'm not eating it. That's going to be the one guy that's not getting any fish. Everybody else eat the fish.
Right. Well, they don't even look. They don't even want to know it's from China. What they do know is that China's got a different political system than us.
Political system.
Right. And so it's, and it's compared to like United States, where we're democracy and free, and they're different. So I can see where that would be maybe not the enemy, but they are different. They have a mass amount of people.
Right.
Their government controls them. These are all scary things. And the fact they're so far away. And they're huge. They have so many.
There's so many people.
And that they're willing to kind of do what they think is right for their mass amount of people. Like restrict on how many babies. They just very much control this army, really. Even if it's just women and children. I mean, it's a mass amount of people. And so I think that maybe not the enemy, but I would, it's kind of good. I would say a lot of people do look at China as like.
Maybe it's just me.
Maybe it's just
But
you.
and maybe too, because once again, everybody's the way you look at the world is shaped by your experience and how you. This government, to me,
Right.
has
Have
been
you
the
been
enemy.
to China?
No,
Okay.
no.
But you've been other places in the world.
No, I've been to Iraq,
Right.
but that wasn't on a vacation.
No. That's.
And I've been to Kuwait, once again, not a vacation.
No.
Yeah. So those are the two countries I've been to out of this country.
And maybe it's because I have not been to places like that at all. That it's so. It's imagined in my mind.
Well, I think, living here and in this melting pot of humanity, and then living in a big city before, living in New York and then living in D.C., and being exposed to cultures within their own context in the city. Mm-hmm. And so Chinatowns and Little Italies and places like that kind of give you, that's one way. But the other way is when you live in a metropolitan area like that, you're around people from so many different countries.
Yeah.
And so maybe my viewpoint is a little different. But I've never seen China.
Right.
Now, of course, I've never seen China's enemy. This is, to me, it's kind of, and I know from a political standpoint, and from their place is different from our standpoint. They are, but I've never felt that way about China. I wonder how many American citizens really, if you sit down and list the number of enemies, I would think they would say Russia, Iran, well, any Middle Eastern country.
Yeah.
Right? Russia, then Iran, then, right? China would probably be at the bottom.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to hear it. If you listen to the show, and because that's what we're doing this today, is for you to think about things. This is a discussion we're having today, which we have most times. This is a discussion so that you can have a discussion, right? I mean, how many people think of China as the enemy? Because I would think, let's post 9/11. Mm-hmm. To this country, unfortunately, the entire Middle East was there. Mm-hmm. There was no, in many cases, and in many pockets, and in many minds, there was no discernment. There was no difference. Mm-hmm. Okay, so everyone that looked like anybody that came from that part of the world became the enemy.
Right.
But you don't see people, and I want to hear from my Chinese brothers and sisters. And I'm certain they've been discriminated against, of course. But are we seeing, this? We don't see, nobody gets off a plane when they see somebody that looks of Chinese descent getting on the plane.
Right, and they get concerned.
Right.
But now they might. But now they might.
But I don't.
Because of the
good
coronavirus.
Point. Good point. So once again, now we have to ask ourselves this next question. If we think about this, how much of, and not being a conspiracy theorist, but how much of this unintentionally will drive some form of bigotry toward
Chinese people?
Well, not just Chinese people, because I don't think the average American could tell the difference between somebody from China or. I mean, then let's being honest.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be honest. I can't. I would seriously have to ask someone
before I assumed.
Before I assume that you're Chinese versus. I can't
Korean.
make that discernment. And once again, I'm not saying all Chinese people look alike.
No.
But I'm just saying I can't. I don't know enough about.
Right. Well, it's not a big culture here. The Asian culture's not big. Now, Washington State.
Right.
Huge.
Right. And I think if you have that kind of interaction.
Exposure.
Exactly. And then things like names, certain things like that can give you kind of a tip off to somebody that's maybe Chinese versus Vietnamese, things like that. It's like when I was in the Army, your name is on your thing. And so over time you learn those names that are Vietnamese, some those that are Chinese, Japanese. So you kind of pick it up that way. But outside of that, if I don't know your name and I'm just, I'm not going to assume you're Chinese or Korean and even if I go in a restaurant of one of those ethnicities, I'm not going to assume that, the Chinese restaurant that I go to is not owned by people from China.
Right.
They're South Koreans.
Right.
Right. Or the other one I used to go to, he was a Vietnamese guy. And the pizza place I go to is owned by a black guy. You see what I'm saying? So it's like me going to the pizza parlor and they're saying, "Are you part Italian?
You Italian?
Are you Italian?" It's like, yeah, I really am. But a little bit of black goes a long way, and that's true. Like somebody said to me the other day that she had dated a mixed person, and I said, mixed with what? Like white and something else, like other than black? And she was like, no, white and black. I was like, you dated a black person. There's no mixed person. There isn't. I mean, all black people are mixed with all black Americans are. Most of us. Now I have to say all of us cannot trace our lineage straight back to one Nigerian.
Right.
So we're all mixed with. I got Scotch Irish in me. That's a black American.
Yeah.
Black American. We're a whole different group of people.
Mixed is such a bad word to me, and I don't.
And I understood where she was coming from. It was because she was trying to explain to me that. But I said, yeah, you date a black man.
Yeah. Let's
you,
not even try to.
Let's stop. Black man, white woman, black baby.
Like you said, it takes just a little.
But once again, where does that come from? We didn't create that. We didn't create race. We didn't create these definitions. But Barack Obama's black. I mean, first black president. I didn't say it.
I know.
We didn't say it. We have the first mixed president.
Right. The first multiracial or biracial president.
And he was raised by the white folk, which is something else. Not so culturally, he wasn't raised by the Africans. He was raised by a white grandmother, grandfather, and his white mama.
Yeah.
He traveled around the world too, so he had different experience. But the bottom line is, what's Barack Obama?
Right.
What does he identify as?
I hope a black, because I've said first black president over and over.
He never says I'm the first mixed president.
Yeah.
He's black. Tiger Woods.
Does he?
See, that could get you tricky.
Yeah.
Because Tiger's black and
another.
What's his mother?
Korean, I thought. Or
no, I think she's. I want to say she's from Thailand. I want to say she's Thai.
Yeah.
So he calls himself Cablinasian or something.
Oh, does he?
Yeah. Or she's Cambodian. I don't know, but I know she's not. His daddy's
White.
black,
right?
And the daddy thing is black and Native American. I think he's got some Native American. I think he did. I think he had some Native. But once again, a lot of black Americans, especially from the South, also. Yeah, I'm part Native American too.
Yeah.
So I just don't have my tribal card. I don't think they'll give it to me. 'Cause I can't trace mine back to
Right.
I was going to say Sacagawea, and now I have to say it.
No, you do.
I have to say Sacagawea. Because I like the word Sacagawea. I like that name.
Sounds dirty.
What's your name? We're going to take a break real quick because we're going to come out with a whole other topic. We're going to talk about on the last half of our, we're going to talk about sexual identity in children, sexuality and sexual identity in children, and how parents deal with it. So stay tuned for that discussion. You're listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
The Live Oak Public Library System offers local residents access to hundreds of thousands of DVDs, television programs, albums, audiobooks, ebooks, and digital comic books for free on your streaming television and mobile devices through the Hoopla app. Supported devices include Roku, Fire, Apple TV, iPhone, and Android, among others. The selection is vast. All you need is your library card. Find the Hoopla app on your device and more information at liveoakpl.org.
WRUU 107.5 FM is a new and different listener-supported and all-volunteer community radio station for Savannah. Our diverse broadcast and web programming is supported by generous listeners who value our passion and spunk. We are independent of other media and receive no government or large corporate support. People like you are the largest and most important source of our funding. Go to WRUU.org to find out how you can make a one-time or monthly contribution. Thank you. And you're back with Your Mind Matters. I'm here with Abby Johnson, our resident sociologist.
Hey.
Hey.
Now we're talking about gender identity. That's
we're
awesome.
going to talk about that because I had a couple of patients come in this week, not just gender, but sexual
orientation, identity.
Mm-hmm. And one in particular really got me thinking about how we, I consider myself very liberal-minded across all spheres, financially, fiscally, socially. I'm of the ilk of do what you do as long as you're not hurting other people and live your life, because that's the way I want to live mine. So I had a patient come in, and they have a son, a young lady. They have a son, and she said she starts the conversation with, she's been dealing with a lot this week. So when I start thinking about things like financial issues, death, job, illness. Okay, not to minimize, and this is one of them because I realize this is a big one. I hear this at least 2 or 3 times a month.
Okay.
Her 11-year-old, a boy, she started the conversation by saying that her 11-year-old boy has identified as bisexual. Her 11-year-old son is identified, right? So I asked her, give me some context behind this. Did he just come out, or what happened? No, what happened is some kind of a way they got concerned about his they check his phone regularly, like parents I think should do.
Whoa.
Right? I think if
at 11?
At 11, I definitely think even 15, 16. If you're not paying the bill, I'm checking.
Yeah.
I'm checking. So you better figure out how to.
My phone.
Yeah. I don't have 15-year-olds. I have 20-year-olds, and if I pay the bill, if I ask for that phone, they better give it up. They know the deal. My two know the deal. We don't have that problem.
Right.
So they went through his phone like they do just to make certain everything is square. And what they found was him having a discussion with his girlfriend. Now, they knew he had a girlfriend, okay? Another 11-year-old girl. Having a discussion with his girlfriend about the fact that she likes another girl and he likes another boy. And so now they come together, the patient and her husband, they come together. It's a young couple. They're like in their late 20s, both working folks. And they, like early 30s, they come together. And now this is a big concern for them because this is shocking to them. This is like a big, shocking thing. And how they go through processing that then, right? And so I used to stand back years ago when I would get these cases. Well, this is very disturbing for her that her son now they're also conservative, self-described conservative white Christians. Okay, but even if they were black, we know that in the black community masculinity is valued, and that there is this. I talked to another patient the same day, an older black woman who seemed to be very socially liberal. Mm-hmm. But when it came to the issue of homosexuality and it being out, her response was something should be left in the closet. Okay, so and we've seen this in the media, in the political coverage when it came to like Pete Buttigieg, the idea that was he going to be able to pick up black support because of the ideas of the conservative idea of homosexuality in the black community. So back to her. So then we had this discussion of how, and it created this, not, I don't want to say rift, but this, I could tell there was a difference of opinion. The father wanted to put the son in private school, Christian school, which I wasn't really going to do anything, but I followed the idea. I followed the reaction of it. Right here, this is something they have one child.
How do you just listen?
Yes. You listen and find an opportunity. You have to think about what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Because it's not my job to influence the decisions, but
Right.
to help with making a decision and help walk through.
Them make the decision.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. What I could say to a friend, hey, I'm gonna tell you from somebody who went to a Christian school. I went to Lutheran school.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, the Lutheran school was.
Yeah.
As far as
Bad.
we
were bad.
Yeah, we had way more time on our hands. Kids wasn't worried about eating and sleeping, and
Right.
so they had
Right.
It's not they were rich, but they were okay.
Yeah.
And especially here, the patient had come from another state, a small town in another state. She had gone to a Christian school, but it was a community Christian school. Only had 100 kids in the whole school. So that was their school. So not only was she going to school with, she was going to school with her neighbors, friends. They all went to the same church. So it was all the same community.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the schools they're talking about, these people come from all over the city.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the first point.
Okay. That's what the husband was
That's
thinking.
what the husband was thinking.
Okay.
His idea was, let's do this. She wasn't quite certain about it, but I could see from the way she was talking about it, she wasn't really going to fight this. But it was bothering her inside because, here's the big thing, the boy loves the school he's in.
Yeah. Changing an 11-year-old social scenery is not.
He has friends. But I can understand. I can be empathetic to both sides. So, looking at it as a parent, even those of us that are that are very liberal minded when it comes to sexuality and gender issues, when it knocks on your doorstep, I think because it's so different, and I'll give you something that not shocked me, but threw me for a minute. Just a second, it threw me. I'm listening to the radio coming here, and I'm listening to a man. Now, I knew he was gay, and then he started talking about his fiance, another man. Not shocked. What shocked me, not shocked me, but it was like, it jolted you for a second, was he said, my baby's daddy. Now, I imagine it was a joke, kind of.
Yeah, sure. I
They have a child together. I don't know if they're adopted or it's just the other guy's son or what the deal is.
Well, they didn't have it biologically.
See, my point, but the reason why I'm saying that is because putting it in context, you hear a man say,
yeah, sure.
it just for a second it throws you. Not that there's anything wrong with their situation. Life situation is beautiful. My point is, we're all human beings, and we have what we consider normal.
Socialization.
Right, and that's what I want to talk. What do you think about that?
Oh my gosh. Well, which example? The couple
All together,
or
because I think the kid, the parents had the same kind of response, this kind of knee jerk. We have to do something. We have to fix
right.
it.
We got to fix this.
Right.
We got to fix this. Well, first of all, let me ask you a question. At 11 years old, is that typical for a sexual identity to start development? I mean, I guess that is around puberty, right?
Yes, right.
Okay.
And then you also have to think about the exposure of other children, social media, and we're much more open today than we were before.
gosh, so
when I
many
was in school,
factors.
nobody identified as being gay at all. That was like, other people would identify somebody as being gay because of the way they acted, and then that was a pejorative. But now, like I told you before, I asked my daughter before, and I wish she were here to be the resident on that subject. Yeah. And I asked her, I said, do you have any straight friends? Because growing up, her going through middle school and then high school, all of her friends were bi or gay. So in other words, it was open for interpretation. Right? You could be what you want to be. So you have to add that to the conversation. That's where we're living today. So if you're looking through the lens of 20, 30 years ago, like I am, well, I'm 50 years old, right? 40 years ago, that was not even the concept.
Right.
Even grown, what we call grown folks, that were, many of which were very discreet about what they were doing because it was not as socially acceptable. I'm not going to say it's socially acceptable yet, but it's more socially acceptable than it was.
Right. So popular. It's popular to identify with these margins of society, right? And so nobody really wants to be normal, right? And so and that's what's interesting about this conversation with the 11-year-olds, that the girl liked another girl and the boy liked another boy.
Right. Now, go ahead. I'm gonna wrap it. I'm gonna wrap that up when you finish. Go.
Well, just like, how, like you said, how much they influence each other. How do we know that, because at 10 years old, the parents done their job. I always say that, like, you have conditioned your child, you have socialized your child, you've instilled the values. You hope that at 11 years old, then they go off into their peers and they hold those values.
Right.
But peers are huge after 10.
Sure.
They're huge. So with them saying that, how do they know that the son just isn't saying it?
Right.
Now, or so he doesn't get rejected.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because once again, I asked for more context.
Yeah.
And I now I'm starting to ask her the question I would have asked my own 11-year-old son. And she asked the question. So she asked the son, you like this boy? Do you want to hold hands with him? Do you want to kiss him? Because she's going through the things that he probably at 11 might have done with this little girl.
Right.
Just those two things. And he says, no. And so she goes, well, how do you like him? So now she has the discussion with him about maybe what you're saying is you admire him. Maybe you're saying you want to be like him. Mm-hmm. Maybe you want to, so I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the whole, and it sounds like that's what's happening, is he's admiring this kid's style. He's admiring how this kid moves. Mm-hmm. And so, but he's looking at the culture around him.
Right, so I must be
so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And he's not, now mind you, from what she told me, he's not ashamed of this.
No.
Right? Because in the context of the group he's with.
But his parents are about to make a decision to take him out of school at 11 years old based on something that is just a popular thought. And we used to all say, like, I've got, like, I envy this girl, or I really want to be friends with her. She's so popular. But really, they're identifying it as a bisexuality, and now the parents are going to do something so disruptive.
Yes. And so we get back to, the idea was to give her some tools to use. And luckily, fortunately for her, she had a lot of the tools. She was very insightful. But that was a mother's intuition looking at her son. You could see where it was what I found out at the end, after we had this discussion about the son and some of these things and going through, what I found out was the father was really just a straight knee-jerk in his mind. Now all he sees is his son and another boy. Mm-hmm. And this is very disturbing to him, which is understandable.
Because of society and what he knew when he was a kid, and how they made fun of probably the kid who had tap shoes or whatever.
Exactly. Or if you didn't want to be that kid.
Right. You certainly weren't aspiring to be like that kid. Yeah.
Right. And so, but the mother had more of a holistic approach, and had more of an approach of knowing the child and looking and saying, well, I know some things about him, and I know some things about people, more psychologically minded, and say, let me ask him some questions.
Yeah, that was really
this.
smart.
At the end, we what we came to was that she and her husband needed to talk from her. She came to the conclusion after our discussion that she and her husband needed to really talk this through more. And that in turn gave her some relief in this, that, that was the point. I didn't want her to leave saying, oh yeah, the doctor told me that you're stupid.
Right.
And this is not going to help at all.
Right.
No, what I wanted to get was her to feel okay, because she was pondering these things. One, is he really this? But two, even if he is, how do we go forward?
Right.
Now that leads us to, for the last 5 minutes. So time does fly, and we can pick up this again.
I like the gender stuff.
Yeah, we can pick this up next week. But the other part that we hadn't really discussed was how her faith. Now we didn't really discuss it because I didn't want to go into that journey with her, and you have to be very careful when you're doing therapy. And talking to people about their faith, and how you interject things into it, even if you share the same faith. I'm a Christian, she's a Christian, but we have two different viewpoints on some of the dogma associated with Christianity. So I was able to understand it. I was able to understand the messages that she was getting from the faith about homosexuality. Because they always start the same way when they talk about homosexuality. Conservative Christians, they'll say, we hate the sin, but we love the sinner. Now, I'm thinking more that homosexuality is not a sin when we're talking about it being a part of you. they're talking about the act of homosexuality, which is described in the Bible, right? They're talking about the immoral acts of men with men and women with women and that sort of thing, which I kind of separate from. I kind of separate the sex out from the love. You love another man, or a woman loves another woman, or but we're so focused on the sex part of everything that. So I tend to stay away from that in that discussion, right? Because my views are going to be totally different, and that's not the point. My job is not to be there to change your belief about your faith.
No, yeah.
But that was another thing that is a big thing, and is that for a lot of and I can see what she was struggling with. Where on the one hand, she may be coming to this idea that, okay, maybe this is a normal variant of human behavior. And now she has to square that with her faith.
That's a lesson you took away from that appointment, I bet. Like she did. Oh my word.
So how do you, from a sociologist standpoint, how do you, how are people squaring this?
Well,
how are people
with the bisexuality? First of all, it's interesting that the child didn't straight up say gay. And have they talked to the parents of the little girl?
No. None of that's been done, because I think the mother.
They want to figure their
right. We'll
first.
figure it out.
Right. Okay.
But I mean, how in general how would you say people square that with their faith?
I think that they are very tunnel visioned until it ends up being somebody that they love, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh crap."
So and I'm having this discussion because I can imagine I'm like this. If it was a dilemma for me at one point, it's probably been a dilemma for somebody else, because we're all more alike than we are different. Okay, so the idea, like I said, I'm very liberal when it comes to social fiscal ideas, and I am a Christian. Okay, I believe in Jesus Christ, etc., and He died for my sins. I'm a Christian. Okay, so I've always believed that it was not a choice. And then I'm now even involved more to say it's a normal human variant of sexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality. But for those people that don't think that way, when you are standing on the outside and it's not yours, it's easy for me, even with my own, to have to contemplate, right? Thinking to myself, okay, at one point I was thinking to myself, what if? And then my son showed no sign. But it was just, I was having this intellectual discussion in my mind based upon seeing what would I do, and I had to really think. I had to really stop for a moment and go, "Wow, it's easy standing on the outside to look at it from a purely intellectual standpoint, but when it's feelings involved, when you're feeling, the viewpoint, because we live through our children, right? Our children are in many ways our legacy. So, and my son's named after me, so he's a junior. So one of the things that had to go through my head is, what if my namesake is gay?
My mini-me.
My mini-me is gay. What? And but to me, it was an intellectual exercise that had to occur because of it's a possible eventuality. Now my son isn't, right? But this was years ago I was thinking about this. So I had to square this, and then once again to square it with my faith, which I never had to do before when it wasn't mine. It was easy for me to have a debate or discussion about homosexuality, the Bible, and right, wrong, sin, not sin. But now when you think, so then you have to take this into seeing people, and you have to once again process that and say, okay, I've been here. I did the exercise in my head. How do you come across that in the discussion of sociology? How people deal with it?
Absolutely, they have to re-identify their faith, because now everything they've been taught is kind of like, well, I can't push this. I can't have this mentality because this is my son.
Right.
I can't keep it so black and white because now it is gray. And it can, and that's probably causing a conflict between the husband and the wife, because things were so straight-laced. They were just so written out for you. And it must be easy to be a Christian, because your just read the Bible and follow it. It's harder to not be. Right. And so if it shakes your faith.
Sure. And also I would say, I'm looking at the conflict in the husband and the conflict in the wife. The conflict with himself. I can imagine.
Do you
this
think
man.
his is faith more, or hers is faith?
I think
his is more like social.
I think both. I would say from a man. I don't know him, but from her description of him and his reaction, I would say it's both. I think both. And then men are going to think, I don't want to generalize, but men
Right,
tend
on
to,
average.
yeah, men tend to compartmentalize and kind of say, okay, this is this, and
They're also less inclined to be like open to the discussion or the reality of different kind of sexualities
Right.
because straight man,
yes, and it also would also depend upon, which I don't know and I wouldn't know, his past.
Oh, sure.
What kind of things he's done or experienced or thought about.
Oh,
Maybe 11
absolutely.
years old, he went through this himself, and it was something else. You know, maybe for him it wasn't just identifying with another boy. It really was some sort of feeling that either he was able to suppress, right, or it could have been none of those things.
Right.
But these are all of the things, the different spheres of humanity that you have to look at.
Yeah.
And saying, and when you, once again, it's easy when you're standing on the outside and there's somebody else, and that's why I tell people when they start saying, I can see the concern they have with what their friends, neighbors, church members are going to say. And that's where I do interject and say, let's back up a little bit. Mm-hmm. If you do, you're going to make a decision by committee based upon your life. You've got enough of your life history to help make that decision than to be, because they're not going to be with you. When all is said and done, when your child is estranged from you or something happens to him, now you're dealing with the guilt from it because you didn't accept them. Guess what? They're not going to be there. It's still your ball to carry. That's where I can interject.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's important to do that because as social beings, social creatures, this is what we look at, what other people think.
Absolutely, but I'm also curious to know, like, the parents, because I'm watching my neighbors go through this with their daughter. She is 15 and she's attempted suicide, but kind of like a cry for help. She does this cutting stuff, and I'm watching them crumble, and I'm like, and again, I'm literally their neighbor, so
Right.
I'm sociologist plus I'm objectively observing this go down,
Right.
and I'm like, you have got to be the parent, okay?
Right.
You are so scared of her that you are not being that strong parent that you were that first 10 years because
Gotcha.
now she's so when is it also okay, be the parent, remember that this is your life, you're a team. But when it comes to like sexuality, 11 years old, are you supposed to be understanding, like when do you kind of become the friend of the parent?
So this is where we're going to pick. I like that. This is where we're going to pick up next week.
Okay.
So next week, this is where we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up with this next week. You've been listening to Your Mind Matters on WRULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5, WRUU.org. We're Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And next week we'll be back.
Yeah.
Abby, you'll be back?
Of
We'll be
course.
back, of course. And so we're going to let the next show jump up because it's about time for us to get out of here. Time flies.
It does.
But we've got this on deck for next week. That's going to be at least our first half hour, if not the entire show, because we'll have
Vicky, yeah.
We'll have her here with us, so you never know where it's going to go. But please tune in. If you have any questions, concerns, or any ideas about another show, or just want to chime in on this discussion, we'd love to hear from you.
How can they contact us?
That's a good one, yeah. So we'll make certain of that next week. Yeah, we'll make certain next week.
We have a Facebook page.
We do have a Facebook page,
and Your Mind Matters
Your Mind Matters,
at
right?
gmail.com.
There we go. So hit us up. See, you threw me under the bus.
I did.
You did.
I
You tossed
did.
me right under the bus.
I
That's
did.
okay.
It's
It's okay. Yes, indeed. Well, thank you for listening to the show today. I'm Dr. Adam Harris, and
Abby Johnson.
remember, your mind does matter. God bless.
Good evening. This is Clarissa with Older and Wiser Ladies. We are women who are 50 years and older who have had
Put it
various
on
life
to 12
experiences.
o'clock.
We have been married
Yeah,
and
we're working
divorced.
good.
We have
Are you
raised
still-
children. Some of us are raising our grandchildren. We have worked and been unemployed. We have been healthy and sick. We have been in car accidents. We've lost our house to fire, flood, tornado, hurricane. Some of us have been married more than once. And so we would like to share what we have learned from these various life experiences with you. So you won't have to make the mistakes we have made, and you wouldn't have to suffer the way we have suffered. Tonight we are talking about children and how children change a relationship or a marriage. If you